All right, Andy, thanks for joining us on episode 007 of the Coded for Chaos podcast.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah. But it's perfect name for an ex-spy, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I never think of myself.
I know, yeah. I know, we both come from like the dorky military intelligence world.
Right.
People think we were actually James Bond.
That's what my recruiter told me I'd be. It was really, which is not. Yeah, complete lie.
And then, but you did learn Chinese.
I did.
You did learn Chinese. How's your Chinese still?
Ooh, not so good.
Yeah.
I love that language, and I wish I had more time with it. I like, I tried to like watch movies or whatever in Chinese and kung fu movies and stuff, and like read a book here and there. Or, like, but yeah, if you don't use it, you lose it. So, but best thing I ever did. Best mistake I ever made was the Army and learned Chinese.
Yeah, no, me too. I didn't get to learn Chinese. I think my D-Lab score was like -500 or something.
Oh,
I didn't get to.
Yeah. I just on tests, but yeah.
So where are you from originally?
I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah. So no Elvis references, please.
No Elvis references. And then so you were like, okay, I got to get out of here. I'm going to become a 98 Golf in the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
And go to California and learn Chinese.
That's pretty much what happened. Yeah. Coming out of high school, I was not a good student at all, and hung out with a bunch of people who wanted to be bigger thugs than they were. And that was my out. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Pretty good, Al. You must have been a pretty smart guy, because it's not like the smartest guys go into that career field in the Army typically. You're like, yes, I'm the smartest guy.
No, I mean, I actually, at least in the class or whatnot, I kind of made the recognition that like I was not the smartest guy in the room, and I need to like roll up my sleeves and try hard. And I think that's like what actually helps me
here.
That's right. Yeah.
So you went to Monterey, you learned Chinese. Monterey's where the language, the defense language school is. I think they still call it that. Yeah, and it's like, from what I hear, I never got to go there. I heard it was a lot of fun. Like, everyone always had a lot of fun there.
Yeah.
Be too much fun?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard this one or not. I don't know what's safe for work or whatever, but it's always like the eagle will fly. There's an eagle, a big statue of the eagle at the bottom of the hill, and the DLI is up on a big hill, so you run down the hill all the time. You run back up, and you see the eagle, and the mantra was, "The eagle will fly when a virgin leaves DLI."
No, we're spicing up.
Yeah. So it was very much like college. Like you go into basic training, you embrace that suck, and then you think you're going to go into more drill sergeants and whatnot. At this time, they didn't have drill sergeants there. I think they have for years now, but
really, they have drill sergeants.
As of like 98, 99. So, but you go there, and it's kind of like all of a sudden you're a college freshman in a dorm, in a co-ed dorm. So lots of things happen.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I've heard lots of stories. So you left there, you go to Hawaii, and you become you're actually using your linguist skills in the U.S. Army as a Chinese linguist. Was it like what you thought it was going to be like, or?
That was if going 30 feet underground under a pineapple field was what I thought, then yes, but it was
yeah.
So, but it was still it was a real mission, and I think that's something that, especially in a peacetime scenario, a lot of military people don't get.
Right.
And so that, therefore, like, it wasn't just like a clock in, clock out. Like, you felt like we had a purpose. Even if it was at the bottom of the rung of what intel work is, it was still exciting at the time.
Yeah, you were like that. We were at the same time. My unit was a mostly Persian Farsi linguist, and they were in the motor pool like 5 days a week.
Right. We didn't have that.
And they're watching their Persian Farsi skills dwindle to almost nothing.
Yeah. The one thing I'll credit that unit, 732nd in my battalion at the time, like they really, focused on skill development and making sure everyone kept their skills up, both with the SIGINT space and also the language stuff for us. So yeah, it was great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So you left there, and you went to the fort, as you call it, Fort Meade, and you this is where you got into the cyber world.
That right. Yeah. So there were some seeds of that in Hawaii, and like this was like, we're in the .com era right now, like 99, 2000, and like there were a couple people that were NSA employees were like, so this like computer stuff, it's going to be a big deal.
Right.
You should maybe look into that. And so I
should have taken keyboarding class instead of typing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like maybe you should get some networking stuff. And I had some of that just from my own interests and whatnot. So I like use that to kind of finagle into a role and some additional classes when I went to Fort Meade. And I was a pretty, like, I really liked the language. So I like poured myself into that, and that helped me kind of negotiate, like, hey, if you want someone who's a pretty good military linguist, I can come in if you teach me this computer stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and that worked
when
I came to Fort Meade. So, and that was the first bridge into kind of cyber, but that was more from a traditional SIGINT perspective, not so much like a how do you defend networks perspective.
Right. Yeah. So that was back when like the NSA was really transitioning from an RF focused Cold War mentality to like oh wow, the whole world's communicating on a different channel. You know, now we don't have collection in those areas. Right? You have to figure out how to collect in these areas. And then 9/11 accelerated everything, and you know, things like the Washington Post saying, hey, Osama bin Laden talks on a satellite phone, and then boom, he stops talking. That was the world we were living in back then. So I understood cool mission area. You had to operate some cool missions. You became a cyber guy a lot, kind of the same way I did, although you were a lot more technical than I did. What made you? Where was the light bulb went off and said like, I want to start a company, build a platform.
Okay.
Was there some more steps?
So there's a few steps in there, and there were so
first you were sitting around in the skiff, and you were like, "I'm gonna start a company."
No. Well, not initially. But like, first it was out of the military, and I actually had plans to become a blue badger, or like a civilian employee, and they had additional steps you have to go through, more polygraphs, whatever. And I was a E5. Sergeant that got out. I had a couple months of savings.
Yeah.
It was over the holidays, and they weren't doing their polygraphs over the holidays.
I'm 5 with a couple months of savings. You were a planner.
I guess, yeah. Or, yeah. You also have like the separation leave and everything. So that gave me a little bit of time too. But eventually, I was like, guys, I can't pay my rent next month.
Yeah.
So I flew my, resume in the air with the clearance, and actually, lo and behold, Booz Allen swooped in.
That's right. Okay. Right. That's right.
And so they put me in, and they put me in an organization called INTOC, the NSA Threat Operations Center. And they had the mission of, hey, let's use all the authorities for intelligence, but also computer network defense and knowledge there, and put those together to start to create a counter mission against all these state-sponsored intrusions that were bubbling up even back then in 2006 timeframe.
We could do a whole separate show on this. We should do a whole separate show on this, on how that's still so broken. Our careers are so remarkably similar. I had the exact same thing happen to me, where like I was going to be a blue badger, and I was applying other places, and the overall salary was less than what I was making in the military. And B, the timeline was just like, hey, I gotta like pay my rent kind of situation.
Yeah.
And Booz Allen, was moving at the speed of light.
Jumped in. Yeah. They put me on the bench for a couple months, and I was good.
Yeah. Like we know we're gonna be able to get this guy billable.
Right.
And okay. So you were at Booz Allen for how long?
Actually just 2 years, but it was a really formative 2 years, right? Like that was a great team, a great company. I established relationships I maintain to this day. Like those were great folks. And INTOC was also growing too. I think we were the first contractors there, and it like by the time I left, it had grown to 50, 100, and it continued to grow and grow and grow. Right. But in 2008, I met a guy, or there are all sorts of folks, collaborating in INTOC, and there's another analyst there that I met, Rich Barger, who was at Symantec at the time. He wooed me over to Symantec of like, hey, you think you can do things inside the SCIF. What if you could do some things outside the SCIF, right? And what if we could marry some of this together, and help the government, help everyone, help the nation, right? And that was like the enticement. It was really good intentions for both of us, and we tried and even grew out a team there together. But we were in 2008, 2009, and like public-private sharing, there's walls that kind of make that harder than it necessarily we wanted it to be, but for good reason. We respect why that's important. But what we found is, and this is bridge to let's start our own company. There was not at the time this mindset within old corporate semantic that like, hey, we should have an adversary focus, right? Like there are, and we were laser focused on what are now called APTs, or advanced persistent threats and whatnot. And, for them, that was not on the radar. And even, the statements we got when we talked with leadership within the company was, hey, we'll be a fast follower in this. We're not going to innovate. And so we saw a need of like, we want to do something more and we want to be proactive. So we got this itch, but we were a couple dumb analysts, right? Like we know how to start a company. So through some networking and friends of our bosses and whatnot, we linked up with what ended up becoming the founding crew of ThreatConnect. We actually didn't have that name at the time. It was Cyber Squared. And that was, 2010, 2011 timeframe. We broke away from Symantec and bootstrapped.
Yeah.
So we did that just by kind of switching our company label, but doing the same sort of services we were doing for the government.
Was Symantec they didn't care about attribution, or they just didn't, they were like, hey, we block and tackle and threats, but
oh man, that's such a big question. Like, like if given the opportunity, they would probably, at the time be careful about writing a blog or whatnot, post APT1, no one cares about that anymore. Right. But, and I think it was more, can you build a business around countering persistent threats as opposed to just updating your AD?
Yeah.
Right. And that was, where is the business opportunity for threat intelligence as a thing?
They were taking data, plugging it into the AV, and like, let's be the state of the art AV.
Correct. Yeah. And things have evolved since then. Obviously, Semantic's now kind of a different thing altogether with Broadcom, but like, it was not only internally, I think they had a good process for internally operationalizing what we would now call threat intelligence without doing some of the clustering and attribution work, but saying like, hey, all this kind of looks the same. What if we have a more efficient heuristic rule to detect more of this? That would be the extent of where they go. Where we were like, if you could actually connect some of these dots between the infrastructure that's being used by these adversaries and the tools that they use, and then who they go after, you could be much more proactive and provide information and intelligence to your customers, right? Yeah. And that's what the light didn't go off there, right? So, and that's kind of where we look to find opportunities once we started Cyber Squared.
So how many people was that with Cyber Squared, like kind of starting that?
I think we were, ring 0, ring 1 set of employees was like 10, okay. But we were all either overhead or billing in the government and bootstrapping, kind of building up and up to where we could start paying the first developers and the first team, a lot of them are still with us, and even executives in the company now that we were paying with beers and goodwill at that time to build the prototypes that became ThreatConnect as a product. Yeah.
So when did it cross the threshold from Cyber Squared to ThreatConnect?
So the official name change, I think, happened like 2014, 2015.
Okay. But
the focus in the company definitely shifted about 2013, where I saw you had like Camacho on the podcast. He was one of our early advisors, and so and a bunch of other folks too. Like we're kind of like,
who's he not advised?
It's a small community, and he's a great guy. Yeah. But and that was, I think, in his World Bank days. And so what we did was this gets into like the why of the product, right? Like where we were doing threat intelligence, some of it was off in the skiff, but we shifted from that to say, you know what, there's a lot of information out here like that can be put together to help. There wasn't really a threat intel industry so much at that time. There was maybe iDefense.
Yeah.
Right. But there was a lot of sharing happening, and a lot of that sharing was like trusted email groups or whatever. And like, there's a long flash to bang between something being sent in an email to someone actually picking up and putting that in a sensor.
Yeah.
Right. Of some sort. And there's a lot of opportunity for loss and just time, relevance loss, et cetera. So, the first thing that we look to do is say, well, how do we, and I tend to think in OODA loops, right? Like how, as a military term. So like observe, orient, decide, act. Like how do you get from knowledge of something you should do and orient to that to say, I'm going to take action on that. And that was what was failing in the space, even in the government space too. We had the same problem. How do you actually take information and operationalize it so you're defending the network?
Right.
And the state of the art at the time was email.
Yep.
And then someone looking at that and transferring it over, or maybe a spreadsheet or something like that, right? So
2014-ish?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. ISACs were, in particular, FS ISAC was a thing, and that was still kind of sharing via email.
Yeah, if you just stood up around that time, stood up the cyber foresight business at Booz Allen, and we were still just pushing out our alerts via email.
Yeah.
And people would receive them, and if they weren't at work, and nothing happened.
So one of the first things that we did was like say, hey, well, let's give everyone a portal. And we had we didn't know, what freemium meant or what a product like growth was at the time. That wasn't a term that we knew, but we were like, hey, let's give a product away that we can get everyone in and start using and get some groundswell and via word of mouth. We got a lot of kind of free advice from other intel analysts, other folks that we had worked with, or a lot that we didn't.
Yeah.
And before we had a paid product, right? Just like come in, share information in a structured way. You can pull it out in a structured way.
Right. You guys weren't doing intel collection at all.
No.
So that was
the collection was the crowdsourcing of it,
yeah.
right, in the beginning. And then what we, and actually with advice from folks like Chris, like, can we actually shorten that time to bang even more? Let's give an API out. Like, so they're like, okay, let's build out an API. At that point where we were like, wait a minute, if we send this stuff into the security controls, into the SIM, into, endpoint as much as, and a lot of folks didn't even have APIs to receive either yet, but like SIM did, we could do that. So, at that point we shifted to, okay, we've got an enterprise product here.
Yeah.
And we started bringing on our first customers. And that was about 2013. And we launched it was a Black Hat party that we did. I still remember that.
Yes. Right. Yeah. All right. That was the origin story of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about the origin story of ThreatConnect. We're here to talk about more than just ThreatConnect today. We're here to talk about threat intelligence, intel sharing, the whole industry.
Yeah.
So how have the tactics of adversaries kind of changed at a very high level from all the way from your days, sitting in a skiff at NSA, doing your first kind of cyber job, to the origins of ThreatConnect and sharing threat intel across the platform.
Man.
So now where everything's moving at the freaking speed of light, but AI powered cyber.
That's right.
Yeah.
Geez, man, like how do you condense a decade into like a short 30-second response or something, right? Like, maybe the first thing to say is like, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
Right. I think
that's a really good way to,
like, I think everyone in cyber knows that if you've been here for a minute, right? Like, yes, there are evolutions of things, like with the state sponsored actors, like the scope has changed dramatically. You could take each one of them, like what's China doing, what's Russia doing, what's Iran doing, like, and the new guys that have popped up since then, or what's, even sort of the semi-friendlies or the friendlies, or what are they doing? But I'll pick on China for a second here, right? Like, given my background, initial attack vectors, like a lot of that hasn't changed. Phishing, doing drive-by, watering hole attacks, remote exploits. Probably they've gotten a bit more creative with, and even some of the targeting, I think, has become more strategic in the sense that they're not just going after end users and swimming upstream. They'll go after like, hey, let's look at what let's go after Avanti. Let's go after I think Combol. Right, like
I didn't know about that one.
That's like 2-3 weeks ago.
All right, well,
with so like They had a couple of days that they were going after CrowdStrike put out a blog.
We sold a company, Trapec Security, to Commvault.
Oh, did you? Really?
Like their first security acquisition. I mean, there was a deception company, so I wonder if it played a part in.
Maybe they found it. I don't know. I don't know the backstory for it, but like how it's discovered. Yeah. But
because you have a huge new federal practice too.
Yeah. I mean, it. So some parts are like where the adversary changes on their own volition, and then how has the threat landscape changed in terms of like everything moving to cloud and you've got these new choke points. So like kind of strategic vectors. If I can exploit that as the attacker, then I can get access to everything.
Yeah.
Right. And that like SolarWinds, like you can see that happening again and again.
That's a really good way of looking at it. Do China used to have the general reputation of being sophisticated, but like brute force, like they would kick in the door and they didn't really give a shit if somebody knew they were there. Do you think that's changed a bit? They operate in a more covert way, and Russians were known as like the tradecraft guys that could break in.
It's like all things all at once, right? Like, and so maybe this has always been the case, like because China has so many different groups that operate semi-independently of each other,
right?
And then they have a whole economy around it behind them with that's kind of government or quasi-government and contractors and whatnot. Like they all had different levels of skill. They all have different risk thresholds on how loud they'll be. Right.
So you got door kickers, you got the covert guy.
Right.
You got
like, I mean, you've got the guys, this whole Typhoon guys getting in, and like, I mean, the scope of that is just tremendous to be like, okay, basically the telecommunication infrastructure of the United States was compromised. Right. Like now, how long were they there, et cetera? Like, I saw an article like, well, they failed because they got caught. Sure. That's a valid argument, but they made it through a presidential election.
Yeah.
And then the Russians, I think, have flipped, right? Like, and this isn't new. This would go back to 2016 and the election cycle there. Like, they're employing techniques that they tested in Eastern Europe for like that are cyber / disinformation that have they rarefied over there and they brought them here. That's a bold move.
Yeah.
They don't care if they're known, right? They care that they put us a wedge into our society, right? Or deepen a wedge in our society that was already existing. That's their goal, right? Like, and so like the techniques have, everything's on the table in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't think where are the red lines? That's hard to say.
I feel like, Emery, I don't know. You started off by saying the more things change, the more they stay the same. I feel like there's got to be like some kind of shakeup that takes place in the industry that hasn't happened yet. And I know AI might be that or whatever, right? But so like just from a defensive perspective, because part of this conference here this week in DC, there was some discussion around hacking back, and I know that's always kind of a discussion and marks of war. And I'm like, I'm not totally against this concept. If you were to, empower an organization, to pick one or two, and like somehow it's sort of like arming pilots on a planes after 9/11. That happened, right? Where you have pilots that now are in this program. And I know cyber's different because then you get some Yahoo who's going to like take down the European 911 system or whatever. But this recent social engineered attack on Coinbase, Coinbase actually went out and put a bounty on the people that were trying to put a bounty on them, and so it's those sorts of things. I mean, it's not necessarily hacking back, but it's like,
hey, let's
do something different.
That's right. No, I think that's the right approach, and let me qualify that, right? Like, the hack back goes, that's a old argument, right? And I think it got squashed back in the day because it was what was being suggested are probably too blunt object kind of like oriented attacks. Like, well, that's not going to achieve an objective you want anyway, just to like go DDoS, a country because they're hacking you or whatever you think you're going to do. Like, that's not going to achieve a realistic objective. However, just blanket saying we're going to be always defensive, always in react mode is not wise either.
That's not right. Yeah. So there's got to be something else.
Right. Yeah. And so like the example you just gave with Coinbase, I actually wasn't aware of that, but that sounds like that's legit.
Yeah.
Like why I sit back? Like maybe think of like, if we do live in a wild, wild west, then where's the Pinkerton security guys?
Yeah.
Like the kind of like, lean forward.
Something different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And instead of like just, Northeast Asia saying, going to another conference and having people talking about cross queuing and collaboration and like, more, we got to share more. Like we've been talking about this for 25 years, more sharing, let's reorg the thing. So the thing talks to the thing. But you guys were, through building a platform at ThreatConnect, you were kind of cutting through the noise and starting to share things at a lot faster speed and getting information to the right people at the right places at the right time. How is like the game of threat intel management, dissemination, collection changed inside organizations?
For sure. That, this gets into a little bit more of a shift in towards like, where's the market today?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and the tech has changed. That I think is, where we started 2013, 2014 timeframe with like, hey, it's a huge win to get some vetted IOCs into the security controls. And it still is.
Yeah.
Right. But that's just playing a faster game of whack-a-mole at some level, right? And then we get that, right? It has utility, it has value, but if that's all it is, then we're not moving the needle enough, right? And to be frank, like the intel providers that have emerged over the past decade and evolved themselves, as well as the SIMs on the other side of it, or the platform companies on the other side of it, they're either, they don't necessarily need a middle piece between them to connect those things if it's one source of information. Multi-source, I think there's a strong argument like, hey, and also if you want to put your own filters in place, that's where like, we help add the customer's logic into what does get operationalized. And that is so critically important that the IOC level, bottom of the pyramid of pain, it's not enough, right? And so like, if we can enable decision making and action, again, like tighten OODA loops, not just at this really base operational level with IOCs, but also at here's what the threat actor techniques are that are in your threat space.
Yeah.
And help you find which ones you have gaps within your organization, and not just where the gaps are, but which ones are actually critical points for you for risk in your organization.
So this is where the risk quantification is.
Where these things come together and start to kind of merge in with exposure management as well. Like what are you exposed to? Then, okay, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
Because if I like to think of things of like, it's not just that you don't need to protect against all threat actors, right? Like you need to protect against the ones that matter and are going to have impact your organization, your bottom line, or your mission. And so look at where the impact's going to be. And then if you have 99 problems that day, solve those that are going to be most impactful.
Right.
So, and that's what the risk quant does together with what we're doing with TIP and providing the adversary view of what the threats we're up to and which ones are actually have a capability and intent against.
So for the person that doesn't know like about that specifically, they might say, okay, risk quantification sounds a lot like security scorecard or BitSight or something like that. Like how is that different than?
Yeah, it's a great question. So security scorecard looks primarily and actually like we partner with them, right?
Yeah.
Like they have our RQ solution inside, but like their core product is an outside in view, right? This is what you look like from the outside as we scan you, right? Our RQ or cyber risk quantification is looking internally at the assets within your organization, the security control configurations that you have in place, right? And then on top of that, saying where are you actually exposed? Also, what vulnerabilities do you have? Pulling in data from phone management, from wherever we can get it from, even legacy CMDBs or own tech that will go out and kind of look at what's inside the network. And then saying, okay, what are you exposed to? Pull in the threat intelligence of what's in your threat space as another layer to say, this is where you have adversaries with capability and intent to take advantage of those exposures. And then this is what that means to your business in terms of risk. Like in a year, you can expect that you have a 40% probability of losing $20 million to a ransomware attack.
So this is something you could give to a board.
That's right.
And like a board could look at it and say, "Hey, cyber guy, what should I expect this year?" They could have like this would be like
So
highly probable with a high degree of probability, sir. This is what it's going to look like.
So that's where CRQ started,
Yeah.
right? And that's absolutely like that's the meat and potatoes of it. Let me enable the CISO to have informed conversations up to the board, to CEO, board, et cetera, but also across the other lines of business, right? Where we're taking it is let's actually use it operationally down within the security organization, right? So if we can move down to like a technique level, right, where threat intel is moving up to techniques and articulating things at how do you block things. Risk, or how we're operationalizing risk, is actually meeting in the middle there at like
network technical level
procedures. Yeah. So minor attack becomes a great view of like what we're looking at there.
Yeah. Awesome. So as ThreatConnect scaled, how did you guys decide to bring on like outside capital and start talking to dirty, nasty venture capital?
Yeah.
Center.
I love venture capitalists. I really have. As a matter of fact, so we bootstrapped the first few years, right? Like we did all these services. We got up to a couple million in revenue or whatever in just service revenue.
Yep.
Paid the initial team for development there. And, there's pluses and minuses to every strategy. That was a good strategy. Was it perfect? It's debatable. I've seen others go right in with seed and with VCs from day one. You can argue that like there's a good point in bootstrapping that you get that early control without having too many outside voices in. But actually, I mean, you might be biased yourself. I don't know, but like I think there's a value in having experienced and aligned voices guiding you, right? Your VCs aren't just people writing you checks; they're advisors, right? Or the best ones are. So there's probably some opportunities that we moved slower on because we didn't have those voices in the room with us.
Yeah.
At the same time, we did have flexibility to get the initial product market fit without a lot of pressure and have clarity in like what we wanted to do when, because we were self-funded.
Yeah.
So we took a couple years, short answer to that. And it was probably, if we did our first launch in 2013, I think we took our A round and first VC investment in 2015.
Okay.
Right. So, and then things did start to scale up pretty quickly, and that's an exciting time.
Yeah.
So
how did your brand evolve over that time? Like you guys, you bring on investors and they have ideas, and like you got to look different. You got to look, you got to like sell the sizzle a little bit and not just the steak.
Yeah.
When did you guys bring on like the orange color scheme? Like that's somehow related to like Star Wars, right? And then
we've had man, on the marketing front, we've had a few logos over the years, right? And the initial ones were like, I'd still have a place in my heart for it. Like I call it the splat, because it connects all the dots, right?
Oh, right.
But that's evolved over the years, and now we're just like a TC that's a little bit more like 80s retro feel.
Yeah.
So the brand, some of that's with like marketing leaders. They come in and they want to like, make kind of evolve the way things look or whatever. So that's the first thing they come in and do. That being said, like in terms of like maybe feeling like more of a grown up company, it was definitely in the space between A and B round that like we had a brand that was recognized, that people knew, okay, this is ThreatConnect, this is what we do.
Right. Yeah, I think that's it. And along with the brand and that, like companies grow up and things change. Like how has your role evolved over that time?
Yeah. So early days, definitely, there's the founder mode adage, like that's what you do. You do whatever you need to, and the roles are less defined. I took on, I never wanted to be a product manager. Like I felt like that wasn't what I thought I was going to be when I grew up.
Right.
But that was what was needed. Right. And so that's where I jumped in, with some nudging, admittedly. But then I also, over the time had our threat research team, which fed right into the product. Our initial customer success team, after the first 6 months or so, I took that on and scaled that. And then, it eventually, like, if you're going to specialize in one thing, well, you can. If you're going to be an operator or COO equivalent or something like that, it's actually better not to try to have product and the business side. So, you can bring in folks that are smarter, better, faster, and specialized at that, and that's what we've done over the years.
Do you think about the idea? I talk about it all the time. We've never really been in a position where, I had direct control of a company, VC, right? So like on the board, I can stomp my foot enough and like make suggestions, and nobody really ever has to totally listen to me, sometimes more often than not. But like, I've always thought it'd be interesting to bring in a product person from outside of cyber, like from the gaming industry or something else, to kind of bring in a whole different way of thinking about things. Have you seen that happen in any other company in the industry? Like, I actually thought about it. Polarity is where I thought about it for a long time. Or so I was like, what if we brought in like somebody totally from a completely different industry to help us think differently about it?
I'm trying to think of some examples where I have seen that. I have seen it, right? Like, it's just like going from like, maybe the analogy is like going from traditional intel to like going to cyber intel. Like, there's a leap that you have to make, and you have to have the right mindset to transition in. I think it's the same in product management world. Like you get into a sort of a niche of specialty, but there are some core tenets of the practice of product management that translate into cyber, and you can bring a fresh set of eyes, and it's good. And certainly I think when you're at the point where you're going to scale the product, like you have that initial PMF, your product market fit, and you've got something, you've got like the magic in the bottle, the lightning in the bottle. At that point, bringing in what I call a scaler for the product is probably a good move.
That's the pivot point right there.
That would be my input into that, because too early, that subject matter expertise is really important.
Yeah, because you could build a product that no longer reflects the customer's needs.
Yeah, you get something lost in translation there, right? So you need somewhere feeding that. If you're not that as a product person, you need to have really good ability to talk to the customers and bring them in and get the insight, or have other internal sources too. But if you have that kind of foundation, and then you can have someone come in to say, okay, I know how to take this from 10 to 50 or 50 to 100. Like
that was like the UI and the UX and all. You can like start to really boil it down and make it super simplified, and make sure that it evolves. And that kind of leads into my next question about like, all right, so you guys were early in the industry for building this thing that was taking people that used to just share information by email. People were still writing sticky notes and popping them up on the wall and writing them over to people. Like, that was the state of the art back then. ThreatConnect was there, connecting the dots. The amoeba logo was a very good representative. What do you call it? The
splat.
Yeah, the splat of connecting, of a wire diagram, connecting the different data flows. We're now in this like super fast, high paced world where there's just so much threat intel data. So much, you parse it to just like just terabytes of data. Even private companies are parsing through that much data.
Right.
What does the future look like in a world like that? Threat intel is not going away. In a lot of ways, I still think threat intel still doesn't drive operations like it should in cyber, like it does in the military. In the military, intel drives operations. Like, you got to know what's over the next ridgeline, or you're going to be sending your dudes into like a shitstorm.
Yeah, actually, we had this in our market. Like, I believe so much, I like pushed it into our marketing early on. Of like, we'd have this like Mobius strip or like infinity loop where it's like the J2 and the J3. Right. Like, you need a symbiotic relationship there. Right. One serves the other. Intel serves ops. Period. Right. Like, that Intel doesn't exist without that. But there needs to be a feedback loop between the two.
Right.
And actually, that was a big point in our picking up Polarity, was that there's no better, like you are actually at the heads up display of the analysts as they're doing the investigation. Intel can feed right into them while they're doing it, but also there's the relevant telemetry feeding back into your systems, ThreatConnect included, but not only ThreatConnect, right? To make sure you're capturing the in military terms, like the pocket litter that can be intelligence, right? The artifacts and whatnot that can then be refined to be turned around as intelligence to then protect the next attack, or let the person that's taking on the tier 3 or the IR or building threat hunt know what to do, right? I've always said, like, the most valuable intelligence you will ever get if you invest in it is that from your own investigations. Right? There's nothing more relevant to that.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense. So how's that worked out? So like polarity's down there at like the point of the analyst doing this stuff, right? And you guys are like, how's that integration going?
Dude, like it's been like on so many levels awesome, right? Like one, the products already complemented each other. We already had that story together with our joint customers. Two, like the vision's aligned and what we want to do. Paul Batista, the CEO of Polarity, now doing our corp dev stuff, like his vision on like wanting to do investigative capture, to be able to look at the steps the analyst takes and refine it, and then bring that back into the organization to say, like, let's do the next investigation better, using AI for all that, right? Yeah. Like, and then giving AI some of those tasks as well. That's tightening OODA loops,
Yeah,
right, at the like point of the spear, right? And so we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I still think there's a big revolution that could take place in that J2, J3 Intel driving ops relationship. I still don't think and I think AI is gonna be a big, that, like, because a lot of the things we've never been able to do, we'll probably figure out.
It'll just help scale it better, right? Yeah.
But it's still, I mean, even in the kinetic world, like that relationship can break down quickly because, the guys that are running ops, they don't like to live in a world where some things are like theoretical. And like in Intel, sometimes it's like, you're saying things like with a high degree of probability. And they're like, I don't want fucking high degree of probability. I want to know for sure that's where the guy is. Intel guy, go guarantee me the guy's there. And, and then Intel's usually the guy, the punching bag to be like, okay, you're wrong 99% of the time, but you're right this 1% of the time. It's just the nature of the business. But I still think there's a lot. I still think we're in early innings in cyber intel, even though we've been at this for a while now. Okay. Lightning round.
Okay.
What is the most overused phrase in cybersecurity, or phrases?
Ooh, shit.
There. It could be something really obvious, or.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, in the last 6 months, AI, but like that's too easy, right? Like, yeah, APT.
Okay, APT. All right,
yeah,
that's a good one. Advanced persistent threat. Is it CISO or CISO?
I go with the latter, the CISO.
CISO. Okay.
Yeah,
we've always been a CISO guy.
I have. What's yours?
No, I can't really think about this. CISO. I say CISO.
Okay. Yeah, I got no rhyme or reason.
Yeah,
what it is.
I think it's like you're from. I'm more from the South, and you're from the South. Yeah.
Yeah.
CISO just sounds right. Well, Andy, thanks for joining us on the Coded for Chaos
for sure
podcast. Really appreciate it. It's been a great chatting with you. I actually, after 7 episodes now, I'm starting to realize that even if nobody's watching, I get a lot from just sitting down.
I really enjoyed it.
Talking to people and like learning, because you got no phones, you got no computer screens in front of you. It's just like hearing the story is something I should have known way back when. I think I knew bits and pieces of this. Also just the evolution of the threat intel space. You've been there the whole time, so thanks for sharing on.
Yeah, Hank, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Take care.